Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Sunday, October 2nd. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Michigan State game is in 6 days, the game against Michigan in 55 days. We are now one day closer to that Michigan game, and we are one day closer to an unbeaten Ohio State and an unbeaten Michigan playing in that game. But Michigan took care of Iowa in Iowa City, and the Buckeyes took care of Rutgers here in Columbus. I'm joined by Kevin Noon of BuckeyeHuddle.com. Kevin, there was a lot to talk about in the game. Miyan Williams tied a long-standing Ohio State record. And then at the end of the game, all anyone wanted to talk about was an incident with Greg Schiano and Ryan Day on the sidelines. It was, it wasn't like a crazy brawl or anything, but it was also, I don't think I've ever seen a head coach from one team run all the way across to the other team's sideline and start yelling and be a yelling match between two head coaches on the sideline during a game.
Yeah, I'd made my way down to the fourth quarter, down to the field in the fourth quarter from the press box. Unfortunately, I was on the wrong side. I was over on the north end where the altercation happened on the south end. I'm running over there, and players are running over there. I'm running over there. I get there a little bit too late and kind of hear about what happens. Obviously, it was predicated when Jesse Mirko saw that Rutgers was going to come after our punt, and he kept it and ran to the right side and ran for a first down and quite some more. And then Aaron Cruikshank got him out of bounds, like substantially out of bounds, and the melee ensued, and there was a lot of yelling and everything else. And I think the reason why it's a big deal is Ryan Day and Greg Schiano were on the same staff. You don't see these types of things. This is not something that you say, oh, well, just wait till next week. We'll see something else like this. This is, very infrequent.
Yeah, and, after the game, both coaches addressed it in their post-game press conferences. Kevin was in the Ryan Day press conference. I was in the Greg Schiano press conference. Schiano, for his part, said, that there was speculation, was this a result of, being mad about the fake punt? Was that what it was? And Schiano said no, he recognized it for what it was, which was an automatic, which is basically, the coaches did not say, run a fake punt. It is essentially, if Jesse Mirko sees a certain alignment for the other team that he knows, hey, there's no one over there, I can run and get a first down, I run and get a first down. And, I think Schiano, at least in the postgame, recognized that that's what it was. Schiano said it was a function of his player, Cruikshank, being on the sideline, being surrounded by Ohio State players, and that not being a good situation. And, the sea of red was essentially closing in on him. And he said he wanted to get over there to, defuse the situation because he
with yelling.
With yelling, yes, the best kind of defuse. That is
major de-escalation.
That is bomb disposal 101. I'm not sure where you were trained, sir. He wanted to run over there and de-escalate it before his team left the sideline, and because he said that's when it gets real ugly, and that's when you have real problems. You don't want to have this turn into a thing that gets a lot of people suspended. I would bet the Big Ten will probably be collecting a portion of Ryan Day and or Greg Schiano's paychecks in the upcoming week for their roles in the incident. But in the end, Schiano said, he was successful, believe it or not, in not having this turn into something more than it was. What did Ryan Day have to say about it after the game?
Yeah, first question out of the box was about this, not anything else. And he was asked about it, and he laughed. He's like, I knew this was going to be the first question. And, he tried to downplay it somewhat. Just emotions took over. But, and he kind of explained the situation as Tom had mentioned with what Greg Schiano had said, that it was an automatic read there. And, when Jesse Mirko, once cooler heads prevailed and they had a little conversation, he's like, did anybody, what happened? He's like, well, I saw it and I took it. It's like, did anybody call that? It's like, no, I just saw it and I took it. It's like, well, we'll talk about that tomorrow. So, there'll be a little bit of a discussion. But again, at that point, if they're coming in and they're going to try and block it and it's there, I don't see what the discussion really is at that point. It's just it's a read.
Yeah, and maybe it's more. It'd be interesting to know, is that something that you're upset because you're up by so many and you have to teach him well, if you're up by 39 points, you don't do this, or is it now it's on film and other teams are going to look for it? But yeah, from Rutgers' point of view, they're still trying. Rutgers is out there trying to block the punt. So if Rutgers is still trying, I don't think you can get mad that Ohio State is still trying. That doesn't seem like something that mean, we're all pretending that these two teams are at the same level. They're playing in the same conference. So, I don't know. Blame the cable TV households. I don't know what else to say. That's that was kind of that became the story after the game. That was certainly not at the start of the fourth quarter what we thought the story of the day was going to be. What we probably thought the story of the day was going to be at the end of the third quarter was Mayan Williams. Mayan Williams ties an Ohio State school record held by Pete Johnson and Keith Byers, 5 touchdowns on the day. There was no Travion Henderson. CJ Stroud, we're going to talk about CJ Stroud in a few minutes. He didn't have a tremendous day, but he really didn't need to because Mayan Williams just keeps. I mean, Mayan Williams has gone from like nice story, solid backup to this year, like this is turning into the year of Mayan Williams in some ways.
Right. I mean, you sit there and you look at Mayan Williams, and Travion Henderson, became a game time decision right before the game, and the time from warm-ups to kickoff, which you kind of knew at that point. We saw him out there with no helmet, and you knew what was going to be the situation. So it was going to be a heavy dose of Mayan Williams, but I don't think anybody walked in and expected all of those touchdowns to happen. And yeah, I think that if I'm having a big drive at some point and it's like which running back am I going to put out there based on just body of work of what we've seen so far, it's got to be Mayan Williams.
Yeah. Mayan Williams finishes the game, 21 carries, 189 yards, 5 touchdowns. He had the 70-yarder on the second drive of the third quarter. The first drive of the third quarter, CJ Stroud comes right out and immediately throws an interception. First play, they stop Rutgers, they get the ball back. First play, Mayan Williams, 70 yards, touchdown, bing, bang, boom. And just, I mean, he is, so that skews the numbers a little bit, but still the rest of it, the rest of his day was 20 carries for 119 yards, which is, that's 6 yards a carry. So 6 yards a carry without the long run, 9 yards a carry with the long run. I mean, he is exactly what they need because they have been, that has kind of been the story of this fall is guys who we weren't necessarily talking about in August as this is a guy who's going to be a really crucial part of this year's team.
Right.
He's someone obviously he's going to be a part of the team. He's had some big plays over the years. You knew he was going to be in the rotation. I don't know that you necessarily assumed he's going to be the bell cow in some of these games, but he has done a great job with that. They've had so many injuries. I mean, and we had a question on our post-game show about, so are they just being cautious with these guys, or are these guys all really so hurt that they couldn't play even if this was the Michigan game, these guys couldn't play? And I don't know that we're really going to get a straight answer on that. They're all supposedly not serious, super long-term injuries, so that sort of leads me to believe there's a little bit of caution happening here. But as we talked about on the postgame show, at some point, there's a little bit of a concern that, is there some pattern to all of these injuries? Because it just feels like they've just had a lot of guys miss time so far this fall.
Here's my conspiracy theory for you. Emeka Egbuka was listed, he wasn't even on the availability report. Then he was listed as a game time decision with things sounding like he wasn't going to go. He goes through warm-ups. Travion Henderson is unable to go, and suddenly Emeka Egbuka goes. So, I don't know. I mean, I think that there is something to be said that you do kind of look at your opponent and say, well, I don't think we need these guys. There certainly was a game of where we thought Mike Hall might play. I think, I don't know, was it Arkansas State?
It was.
And we kind of joked and said, well, he's kind of the break glass in case of emergency and put him out there because he was dressed and had his helmet. I mean, obviously a big indication if they take your helmet away, you're not playing. You can't play without a lid. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know exactly what the situation is, and you just can't come right out and say, well, honestly, let's dump on your past opponent. Could these guys have, if it was an important game, if it was a real opponent, would you have been able to play them? That's just not how it works.
Well, this was a game where Rutgers is not a team that has ever posed a significant challenge to Ohio State at any point. They had a 7-0 lead after the Emeka Egbuka punt muff led to a real short drive.
Rutgers' first lead ever against Ohio State.
Rutgers' first lead ever against Ohio State. One string that does continue. They did not score against Ohio State in the second quarter. 9 meetings, 0 points in the second quarter. That is just, even for Rutgers, that's pretty amazing. You look at the Rutgers team, and I think we talked about the fact that Greg Schiano has had, he has he is sort of building this program into more than it has been in the past. They're not there yet, but
No.
you're seeing signs. They probably pressured CJ Stroud into a worse performance than we've seen any other time this season. He was, and this was not terrible, but 13 for 22, 154 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, sacked once. And Greg Schiano after the game talked about the fact that they watched film of CJ Stroud, and he said it was like watching 7-on-7. There was never there was no rush. He was never pressured. He never had to really adjust to anything. It was just stand back there, pat the football, and zip it to one of your super talented receivers. That was not what he necessarily got the whole time on Saturday. Rutgers was a little more physical with Stroud. They were a little more physical with the receivers, and that manifested itself in a lot of penalties.
Right.
But, is this something that, I guess the first question is this something that you would look for other teams to try and, follow this pattern against Ohio State coming forward? And I guess the second question, and perhaps more relevant and important question, is will other teams be able to follow that? Will it's great to say we're going to get to the quarterback. Actually getting to the quarterback,
Right.
well, that's the hard part of that.
Well, and you look at some of the things that Rutgers did as well, it was a little bit out of what Notre Dame did with the two deep safeties and make Ohio State try and do everything underneath, run the ball, some things of that nature, and Ohio State didn't take as long to say, well, we need to run the ball as maybe that it did against Notre Dame. But, I think teams are going to sit there and see some of those things. But let's go right forward to Michigan State. Michigan State had the worst secondary in the nation. Their pass defense was 130 out of 130 last year. And honestly, it really isn't a whole lot better at this point. And that's not taking things away from guys like Xavier Henderson, who I think is a tremendous player out of Central Ohio. But it is what it is. And, I don't know. Teams will sit there and see what happens other places, but a zebra doesn't change his stripes. If you do one thing, you don't just suddenly say, I'm going to do something else and install it in a week. That's just not something that you can do. You certainly can, pick and choose a little bit of what you see there, but you have to kind of be true to who you are and what your personnel is.
And, Ohio State has, changed their defense this year. They have definitely not changed it overnight, but they have changed it for sure. Jim Knowles brought in, the new defense we've talked about ad nauseum this fall with the block destruction with the defensive line and freeing the linebackers up to make tackles. Another big day for the Ohio State linebackers. I think Steel Chambers finished with 12 or 13 tackles. Tommy Eichenberg finished with 9. Steel Chambers had an interception. I mean, just another two tackles for loss for Steel Chambers, a half a tackle for loss for Tommy Eichenberg. The defense has just been fantastic, and they've been fantastic despite losing. They had Denzel Burke back. Denzel Burke didn't look fantastic, but no Cam Brown. They had no Cameron Martinez. They had no Jordan Hancock. They lost Tanner McAllister partway through the game. And you look out there, and there were points semi-early in the game where you had 3 true freshmen out there. You had Sonny Styles out there with the defense. You had Kai Stokes in there at that kind of nickel safety spot because your 2 guys, Tanner McAllister and Cam Martinez, who've been repping there, both injured. You had Jair Brown out there at corner a decent amount because you had Denzel Burke and you had J.K. Johnson, who's done a really nice job. But, Jair Brown, Kai Stokes, Sonny Styles, that's 3 true freshmen playing meaningful minutes, and it's October 1st. That to me, and the results have actually been pretty good. Because you go through the numbers for Rutgers, and 3.0 yards per carry, 11 for 20 passing for 80 yards, 4 yards per attempt, 3 yards per rush. Those are dominant numbers, and Ohio State is doing this with 1.5 hands tied behind their back because of injuries.
And you look, and I think Rutgers had 90 yards of total offense in the first half. I mean, when things were still contested. I mean, honestly, really how long was the game contested? I mean, Ohio State didn't have that big blow-up quarter. It didn't have that quarter where it put up 21 or 24 or 28 points in a quarter. But, Ohio State certainly has had to do it with guys out of the lineup. And when Tanner McAllister left the lineup, Tyleik Williams spent some time in the injury tent. It's just, the next man up. And you do worry at some point they're going to run out of next guy being up. But, for now, things are going well. But, back to the earlier point, how many of these injuries are long-term injuries? How many of them are midterm injuries? How many of them are, we're just not going to play this guy at this point because, it's probably just best not to play him. Let's play the long game here.
Yeah, and so that's going to be a story we're going to be following quite a bit this week heading into the Michigan State game. This is Ohio State now going on the road for the first time. If you're having to do that with a bunch of true freshmen, this is the first time all of these guys have played in any kind of a true road game situation. So there's going to be a lot to talk about this week in terms of, Trevion Henderson's health and Jackson Smith and Jigba's health and, Cam Brown and on
The show's not long enough for us to go through all of them.
Yeah, it is. The availability report is starting to look like the roster. It is extensive, but yeah, that's going to be something that's going to be very interesting to sort of follow this week and then see. Okay, Michigan State has not been consistently excellent, let's say, this year.
Oh, they've been consistent.
Well,
consistently bad.
Yes, not consistently excellent. So we'll see how they treat that game in the challenge of a road game. Anytime you go on the road with a young-ish team, that's always a little bit of a question. But we'll have plenty of fun stuff. Kind of looking forward to hitting the road. I haven't. Those are always a little different. We haven't. I haven't been up to Michigan State since 2018. The 2020 game was.
I was up for 2020.
Yeah, that was. But it has been.
I'm going to let people in a little secret. We may even do some sort of eats feature.
What?
I know. New branding on it. New branding. Mm-hmm. So you look forward. It's coming. Yep. It's coming. You want to tune in to our Buckeye Huddle pregame show. Mm-hmm. It'll debut there, but of course we'll have it on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle.
All right. Well, Kevin just did my job, so I will just tell you that you should check out BuckeyeHuddle.com. Fantastic team of insiders. Kevin, Tony, and I covering the team. Mark Givler, Alex Gleitman covering recruiting. Ross Fulton, Justin Whitlatch, Devin Radcliffe on the X's and O's. Really just a fun and really fantastic team covering Ohio State football from all the different angles. And also a really fun community, very active message board. So sign up today at BuckeyeHuddle.com, become a member, and become a part of that community as we head into the exciting part of the Ohio State football season. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.